Woohoo! Hey! There we are. 11 a.m. Made it. Made it. This is my first time being live in. Oh, my necklace is upside down. There we go. Boop. First time being live. First time doing live office hours in about 4 weeks. It's maybe been a month, I think. Something like that. I'm just looking at my calendar. That's why I look that way. Yeah, it's been a while, hey? It's been a while. So here we are. Welcome. My name is Dr. Shannon Coates, and my pronouns are she, her, or they, them. And I am coming to you live from a little town north of Toronto, which is in the traditional lands, traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Mississauga, and the Wendat-Neuencio peoples. And yeah, I'm here today just doing live office hours for the first time, like I said, in a long time. Woo, what? And part of the reason I'm a singer, educator, and maximizer. All the things. Yeah. And part of the reason I'm live today, part of the reason I wanted to come in here and do a little talk today, not only to reconnect with all my friends online, but also because the VoicePed degree begins on Monday. What? Amazing, amazing. And unlike last year when we did the VoicePed degree, last year I think we covered 5 time zones, maybe 6, I can't remember now. Several time zones, many time zones. I think that's even above several, many. This year, interestingly, only 2 time zones represented. So my time zone, Eastern, and Pacific, which is 3 hours behind mine. Interesting, right? What do you know? Anyway, cool. One of the reasons I wanted to come in here is wanted to just do a little bit of a thing centered around some of the questions that people ask about the VoicePed degree when they are considering doing the VoicePed degree. And one in particular that I think is quite relevant and also that speaks to my answer to this question, I think, speaks to some of the questions and answers that come up all the time on sort of voice forums. So a lot of times on voice forums we see voice teachers asking things like, either I'm brand new to teaching, and so where should I go to get some certification and or the information I need, or how can I, oh, look at all my hair's just done that. You're welcome. How do I get the information I need? How do I get the teaching I need, information I need? Where do I go to get some pedagogy chops? And that happens lots of times on the forums. Either folks who are brand new, folks who are newer to teaching, or folks who want to like upgrade their skills, right? They've been teaching for a while and they want to upgrade their skills. And so those questions, I get tagged in those questions quite a lot on the forums. People are like, look at Shannon's stuff, blah, 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 which is wonderful. And then there's also often there's also a response from folks who are not in academia talking about the danger of doing certification through academia and why you shouldn't, and all of the negatives around doing your certification and going back to school to do a certification. And along with just sort of that's kind of buzzing around in my brain, and then along with that, when people book calls with me or ask me about the VoicePed degree, they ask questions like, why should I do this rather than do my master's? Why should I do this rather than do my doctorate? What is the return on the investment here? I know what my return on investment would be if I did a master's in pedagogy. What is the return on investment to do this, because there's no paper and you're not certified, and so I don't get, for all of that money and time investment, I don't get the paper that tells everyone else that I've done this thing and that I am ostensibly a good teacher now. And those are fair questions, you know? So there's this two sides of this story where people are saying, yeah, but, or on one hand, lots of folks saying, you know, you should never do a degree and it's like academia is corrupt and blah, 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 all that. And then on the other side, there is this like, but why should I do your certification or any certification that isn't through a university because I don't get any credit for it in the big world? It doesn't seem like I get a good return on my investment, right? And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I wanted to talk about three things that I think we should be aware of when it comes to academic degrees and certifications that are equally applicable to non-academic certifications. These three things, equally applicable, these three kind of guidelines and things that we need to figure out. So first of all, let me just say, obviously, I have some degrees. Obviously, I've spent some time. I'm not just pretending. I'm not just saying I'm a doctor. I've spent some time in the old academic institution. One in particular, to be exact. I did all of my degrees at the University of Toronto. So let me just say this out loud. I had a very good experience in all of my degrees, very good experiences, and very good, wonderful teachers, mentors, for the most part, and because I'm in Canada as well, you know, the expense is a little less, especially for your undergrad, and lots of, it was, hey, Liz Jansen-Hurst. It was, I do not regret in any way doing my academic certifications. And so, but here's the caveat. Here's the caveat for my experience. One caveat is this: I live close enough to a wonderful institution with wonderful pedagogy program, and with a teacher who very, very much supported me and mentored me, that I didn't have to put my life on hold or move to a different city or go to, stop my business in order to go to this institution. Now, it was a sacrifice, don't get me wrong, all of those things, yes. And also, I continued to teach. I raised a family, have a wonderful partner, all of those things. So that's one caveat for me. The other caveat for me having a good experience in doing my academic, especially my graduate degrees, which I did later in life. So the other caveat here for me doing those is that I went in as a fully grown adult who had already been teaching. So I went into my master's, and the folks who were in the master's with me did not have the same level of experience teaching that I did. In fact, some of them came directly out of their undergrad, which is wonderful. I'm not saying it's all good. They made the choices, it's all good. And however, because I had that experience, because I was going in as an adult, and because I was going in with the teaching experience already, I was able to discern better what was really relevant for me and what was very relevant for the kind of teaching that I was doing and wanted to do. And I was also able to discern and to discern when things were not relevant to me and were not relevant to the kind of teaching I wanted to do, and to ask for more information or more work, etc., in the things that I knew I wanted and needed, because I was going in as a relatively experienced teacher. At that point, I've been teaching off and on for almost a decade. I've been teaching full-time my daughter was 5, for 5 years. I've been teaching as my full-time thing for 5 years when I went back to do my master's. Yes, exactly. Liz is saying, same thing, right? You start grad school when you've already been teaching for a long time. You're so much more clear on what that education is going to get you when you go in, right? You're so much more clear. So with that in mind, let me say some things here. Three things to understand about degree granting programs, such as any university, college, and that are also very relevant when you're thinking about doing something like the voice ped degree or any of the other training programs that are out there that are not related to a college or university program. So, what kind of learner, first one is, what kind of learner is this program for? And what are the barriers to learning that are inherent in this program? So my issue with academic programs is not that they're bad or they're, ripping people off or, I don't have an issue with that. My issue is that they tend to promise something that they cannot deliver on. That's my issue. And the other thing is that they tend to be directed at people who do not yet know what they want or need necessarily, right? Especially for our graduate programs in pedagogy where, an undergrad, whatever, that's the thing, you do the thing. And I still think that there are issues there. But when we're talking about sort of graduate programs in pedagogy, which are the programs that people are deciding between when they decide between, like, should I do a master's or should I do the voice ped degree, for example, right? So they're deciding between those two things. And I'm not saying that you need to, don't ever do a master's, but my issue is that academia is not very good at being transparent about what kind of learner will thrive in this program and what the learning barriers are, right? They're just not good at that. So and especially if you're a young person who's coming directly from an undergrad, for example, or who has no teaching experience, you come into these programs and you don't know yet what you need. And the program says, we're going to give you pedagogy and you're going to learn how to teach. And then you have to do an audition that's based on you being able to sing classical music well, up to their standards. So that's a barrier. Also, you have to come to our class. You have to be here in person. There are some online programs now, for sure. But the vast majority now are still, you must be here in person. So you must uproot your whole life to come. And also, the kind of learner who thrives in academia, we're not going to be clear about that, right? We're not going to be clear. So, because we assume that So what that means as well is that when we're looking at schools, they're also disincentivized. Academic systems are disincentivized to say to you, hey, this might not be the right program for you, based on the way that you learn and or based on the fact that you have to give up your entire life to travel to get here, based on the barriers to your learning. This might not be, yes. So the academia exists in a bubble by design, and getting unblind to its own systems is a huge challenge, right? So they're not incentivized to really look at you as an individual applicant and say, yeah, this might not be the right program for you. They're not incentivized to do that at all, right? So that's the one thing. In the VPUD, for example, Liz, I think you're right. So saying I don't think it's off base to say that good fit for the program is somewhat contingent on potential future marketing for the program. Right. They are also looking at you and saying, are they going to be like someone who's going to then bring other people in because of how great they are? Yeah, 100%. So that's one of the things. So in a program like, for example, the Voice Ped Degree, I meet with people and very intentionally, now I can do this because I'm small. Hey, Deborah. I can do this because I'm small right now, right? And I will continue to do this even if things get really big. But I meet with you individually and we talk about what your goals are and we talk about your learning. We talk about what you want, what you want to do. The only barrier, the only thing in this one particular realm that I feel that no, I shouldn't say the only. There are many. So here are some of the things where I will say to you, I don't think this is the right program or time for you. One, if you do not have any students yet. If you feel that you can get 3 to 5 students by the time we start the program, amazing. If you don't have any students when we start the program, probably not the right program for you yet. I'm working on something that will be for you. Pre-working with singers, don't worry. But that probably not the right program for you yet because there's so much application based in this program. So I want to make sure. Yes, that's so good, so good. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. The other thing where I'll say I don't think this is the right time for you is if you are really busy because it is a big time commitment. Yeah. If finances are an issue, I will work with you. If the other things are in place, I will work with you to figure out how we can make it work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, you get to make your own choices. If it doesn't work for you, great. It doesn't work for you right now. I'm going to do it again next year. I'll catch you then, right? So these are my only barriers. So a lot of folks who are coming into the VPUD have a barrier because they do not fit in well in the academic system and they don't want to, right? So that's fine. They're going to do the VPUD instead, and they know that the academic system is not going to work for them because they've already tried, in some cases multiple times, and it just doesn't work. And that's fair. That's fine. It's not for everyone, right? The academic system is not going to tell you that, though, are they? No. They're not going to be like, ooh, I don't think this is the right program for you. No, they're not. Liz says, I think one of the many things that is so great about VPUD is that the administrators, decision makers, and the instructors are the same person. You can be fully transparent about the program and be clear about whether the program will serve your client's needs. Exactly right. Yeah. I'm administering. I only want people who are going to, like that. I don't. Anyhow. So the barrier. Again, for me, this is an issue where folks get really mad at academic institutions for not, you're not giving me a thing. And also, I'm telling you right now, there are barriers. There will be barriers. Academic institutions are not incentivized to tell you that this is not a good fit for you. So we got to figure that out, right? Second thing to consider. Are you looking for pedagogy, as in how to teach? Or are you looking for anatomy and physiology, as in is the program offering, pedagogy, as in how to teach, applied, practical understanding of how to teach, educational theories, understanding pedagogy? Or is the program offering anatomy and physiology and calling it pedagogy? Of course this isn't as black and white as I am making it. Of course it is not. Of course there are lots of programs that are doing application, and that's wonderful. And of course I think that anatomy and physiology is a wonderful complement to our teaching, and I think it absolutely, the more we understand about how the voice works, wonderful. I have no issue with that whatsoever. And again, my issue with the academic institutions is that they offer anatomy and physiology and call it pedagogy. It's not. And can they be taught like simultaneously? Yes, of course they can. Can they come together? Yes, of course they can. However, we don't get this explicit like here's how to apply this, and also let's do some mentoring, and also let's figure out how that works for you specifically in your own teaching. What we get is you need to memorize all the names of the thing, and you need to understand how, physiology, well, you need to understand blah blah blah, you have to understand these things in order to be a good teacher. And also we're going to test you on all of those things. We're going to give you quizzes and tests, and we're going to make you memorize stuff, because that you memorizing what the thyroarytenoid does and all of the names of the musculature, the intrinsic muscles of the larynx, that is a terrific indication of whether or not you're going to be an effective voice teacher. It's not. Spoiler alert! Yes, there's also a learning barrier, right? Spoiler alert. Thank you. You knowing all of this information is not it is not a good indicator of whether or not you're going to be an effective voice teacher, right? You having this information. It is the same thing as when we are so mad because a school hires a performer who's had this big career, but they have not learned how to teach. And so then we're like, well, you being a performer doesn't mean you're going to be an effective teacher. But it's the same thing that we're saying in our pedagogy programs, right? We're like, well, you got an A++ in pedagogy class, therefore you must be an effective teacher. No, you're just really good at memorizing stuff. You're just really good at memorizing stuff. Congrats. Or you do really well on tests, right? Of course, that is not the whole thing. Of course. And at the same time, I'm not lying, right? It's not wrong. So, again, the issue is not that academic programs do this thing and everybody hates it, blah, blah, blah. It's not my issue. My issue is that what the academic programs tend to promise, but they can't deliver on it, right? So they're like, yeah, you get out of this program and then and so if I have a master's in voice pedagogy, then I must be a really effective teacher. Well, the fact that I was already an effective teacher before I went in to do my master's just means that I am a more effective teacher now because I have more information. The master's is not what made me an effective teacher, right? Maybe some master's programs do. However, we get this, right? Okay. What we do in the VPUD is we break down the process of teaching. Yes, there's anatomy and physiology. And we break down the process of teaching, the actual process of teaching. What are these I developed pedagogy principles, you're welcome. All of these principles about understanding how to give feedback, when to give feedback, what kind of feedback to give, understanding and based on what we understand about motor learning and what we understand about learning and what we understand, all of those things. And also based on what we know from education, from the people who have actually done all of this research for a long time. So this gets me a little bit annoyed because we talk about all of the, we get more and more into neuroscience, which is wonderful. I love it. We get more and more into motor skills and motor learning, acquisition of motor skills. Love it. I love all of that. And the more we get into those things, the more we apply that to teaching voice, the more we apply these principles to teaching voice that we've learned from neuroscience and some of these other fields. The more the things we say parallel the things that they are already talking about and have been talking about for decades in education. Y'all, the people in education have already figured this out. And so we're over here going oh, yes, because it's a motor skill, we have to do X, Y, Z. And don't get me wrong, I love it. It's all good. But also because it's this, we have to do it this way, and we should be teaching this way, and we should use this language, and blah, blah, blah. Yes. Say all of the education majors. Yes, this is not new information. Also, yes, say all of the coaches, the coaches who've done all the training around how to coach. Yes, this is not new information. This is the way that we have worked in our industry for a long time. Oh, interesting. Sorry, little rant, little off. In the VPUD, one of the things that we do is we talk about how we break down that learning process, but we also set up the reflection process where I am not only reflecting on where I am in my learning journey, but I am also figuring out what I like, what that means for me as a teacher, what that means for how I work with singers. And I'm there just going like, oh, consider this principle. How does that work out for you? So it becomes a thing where I am the teacher, but I also have this like journey that I know, and I can do self-assessment. It's not me externally telling you how to teach. Anyway, the third thing to consider. So we talked about what are the barriers that academia is completely incentivized to not tell you about. What is the, and also that they will say to you, right? Academia will say to you, well, it's a really good program, so you should be willing to give up your life. Also, in lots of parts of academia, like my doctorate, I believe it was my doctorate, I can't remember now. In one of my graduate programs, they make you sign some stuff. I don't know if you sign it. I don't know if it's just an unwritten, it's a written rule, but I don't know if it's like an actual rule where you're only working so many hours, presumably so that you can, devote your best to the program, right? Where they're like, okay, well, if you're working that many hours, then you should maybe be doing the program part time or whatever. Mm. Don't tell me what to do. I'm a grown ass adult. I can tell you whether or not. Anyway, I don't know where I was going there. The second thing that academia, I think, doesn't, right? Okay. The second thing that I think academia doesn't really do well is differentiate how they're teaching you pedagogy versus what they're actually teaching, right? They don't articulate this is what pedagogy is, and also here's how we're actually going to teach it. Here's how you're actually going to learn how to teach, and articulate that well. And so what ends up happening, as I said, is we sort of assume that we're going to get pedagogy or how to teach, and what we get is anatomy and physiology, which can also have some elements of how to teach for sure, but all right. And not all programs, of course, hashtag not all schools, not all teachers. Okay, third one. The vast majority. So the third question to ask yourself if you're looking at a master's versus something that is not in academia is to ask yourself, what is the lens through which this is being taught? So there are lots of lenses out there that are not useful necessarily for folks who want to and who are teaching in a typical independent voice studio. If you are teaching in a typical independent voice studio, and by that I mean you are a generalist, you see lots of different kinds of singers, you see lots of different ages of singers, you see singers at many different stages of development and or coordination, physical coordination, and you see singers at many different stages of emotional and learning development, like all of the, like so many different stages, right? And if you are going to academia for your degree or for your pedagogy training, chances are very high that the information you get will be through the lens of a specialist, not through the lens of a generalist. So the lens of, by that I mean, you will get teaching information that is, and pedagogy, anatomy and physiology, that is mostly relevant to coordinating toward a Western classical tonal outcome, and or mostly relevant to working with matured bodies, like 18 to 24-year-old bodies. And also there's this underlying assumption that the singers you're working with are at a kind of baseline level of coordination, because that's who the folks in academia have worked with and taught. Great, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. My issue, again, is that academia is not good at being honest about that, right? They're not good at it. So they're disincentivized. They're not incentivized to be honest about that. So what do they tell you? Yes, you're going to learn pedagogy and you're going to learn all of the ages from like, young to old, and you're going to learn how to teach all of the different styles. And in some cases, that may be true. I'm not saying that it isn't true in some cases. I would say that in the vast majority of cases, it is not true, because you've got academic teachers in there who are talking to you about anatomy, physiology, how to teach, etc., who have only ever taught this very specific level, this very specific kind of profile of singers. And who also, so, they'd be like, no, I work with children all the time. Yes, you work with elite children's choirs. That's not working with children, my friend. You do master classes with elite children's choirs. That's not the typical independent voice studio. That's not the kid who's coming into a typical independent voice studio. It's not a thing. Yes, I work with children who are on Broadway or whatever. Great. That is not the kid who's coming into a typical independent voice studio, right? Or I go and do master classes with church choirs. I go and do master classes. Yeah, I work with the aging voice all the time. Like I go and do master classes, blah blah blah. Those aren't the typical people in a typical independent voice studio. It's not the same. Also, understanding child and adolescent development is different from working with children and adolescents in an independent voice studio, because you understand the progression, you understand what you may be appropriate, you understand what maybe have appropriate expectations and all that stuff. You may understand that, but if you're not working with them regularly and you're not working, you what you don't understand is how like all of the emotional stuff, all of the like back and forth that goes, all of the movement, all of the like you don't. Mm-mm. So that's the third thing to think about. What is the lens through which this information is going to be given, through which the information and the teaching that I'm receiving is going to pass? What is that lens? And if you are a specialist yourself, you can be a specialist and be an independent voice teacher, right? If you're an independent voice teacher who works primarily with teens in arts programs, or who works primarily with teens who are music theater, like at the arts school, or if you are someone who works primarily with belters or music theater, or who works primarily with adults or whatever, like that's all specialization, and that's great. That's amazing. And also, you may find that that is actually the thing that you want from your program. Amazing. However, if you are a typical independent voice teacher, I'll tell you what, they're not going to tell you as you go into your academic program, oh, by the way, this is all coming through this lens of people who are at this very specific level of coordination, and also who are, grown-ass people, definitely still emotional, definitely all that stuff is happening. People are people. And also, it's different when you're working with adolescents. That's a different thing. It's not linear. It's not linear with humans in any sense, but it's a little bit more stable when you're working with, adults in a program who are there to, sing and all that. Anyway, who audition to get in, and who have this sort of level of, who have a specific level of coordination already. And who are a specific kind of learner, right? There are barriers to getting into those programs. So like they're very specific kinds of learners for the most part. And again, they've done some very specific kind of work in order to be able to get into those programs. So 3 questions to ask yourself when you're considering continuing education. What are the barriers to this program that people aren't telling me about? and that academia is disincentivized to tell me about? What are the barriers? Who can articulate, who is going to tell me who's going to give me actual pedagogy and tell me about the pedagogy rather than just assuming that the things that I'm offering are pedagogy? Who's going to give me the pedagogy I want too, right? Who's going to give me that? And then what's the lens through which this information is coming? Is it actually the lens that is going to be useful for me or not? So once you have those things, then you start to say, okay, so my return on investment here, if I'm investing a lot of money and there's a barrier for me to learn, first of all, or I have to sing music that I'm not super interested in singing in order to even get into the program, that's going to be, first of all, I'm investing a lot in something that may not, I don't know about the return on that one. If I'm looking to get how to teach, information about how to teach, and I'm investing in something that is going to show me and test me, assess my knowledge of anatomy and physiology, yes, education is an investment, 100%. Return on investment is what we're looking for, right? You can measure this. So if I'm looking at if my goal is to be a more effective teacher, then the information about anatomy and physiology, I mean, it might be useful, but what I really want is information about how to be a more effective teacher. And you assessing whether or not I have memorized all the muscles of all of the intrinsic muscles of the larynx correctly or not, that has nothing to do with whether or not I'm a more effective teacher, right? That just has nothing to do with it. So you get to decide what are the things that are going to lead me to what are the actual things that will lead me to becoming a more effective teacher? And also what are the things in this program and or any other program that are in place already where I come out of the program with my own standards of assessment. So I have my own tools for assessing my own journey versus I got my bachelor's, I got my master's, and so at XYZ University says I'm a good teacher. How will you know you're a good teacher going forward? Are you forever going to be like, because I have my degree, therefore I am a good teacher? Like for the rest of your life, you're just going to be a good teacher because you have your degree? Okay. That doesn't seem like a good return on your investment, is all I'm saying. What are the ways that who's going to offer you ways to be able to take the information and take the teaching that you are learning, the application that you are learning, and bring it with you for the rest of your life so that you can self-assess for the rest of your life and maybe have a check-in with someone at some point. Not a check-in like, please tell me whether or not I'm doing it right. A check-in like, here are my goals. I've tried XYZ. What are some other things I should try? Because I don't feel like I'm where I want to be yet, right? Yes, Liz is saying it breaks my heart when interview candidates conflate degrees with efficacy and they're not a good fit to teach. Exactly. So if you want to teach, if that is your goal, to be a more effective teacher, and someone has told you that the master's or the doctorate or the undergrad, take that class, is the thing that is going to tell you that you are an effective teacher, that's lies. That's lies. It's bad. It's lies. The third thing to ask, like I said, is what's the lens through which you're teaching? Lots of academic programs out there will say, or the teachers in them, not the programs, not the marketing, but the teachers in them will say, hey, this is from this viewpoint. There's this is the main population I teach. These are the things we're doing, and also I'm going to bring in a couple of experts to or a couple of subject matter experts, if you will, to where we're gonna we're gonna talk about, I don't know, working with young children. We're going to talk about blah blah blah. We're going to talk about those things. That's terrific. That's amazing, and they're open about it. Great. Lots of programs are not. So lots of programs are just going in there with yeah, this is the best thing you can get, but also then you're with your degree out there saying, yes, I'm a great teacher because so-and-so at XYZ University says I am. I get it so hard when people say, but if I don't have the piece of paper, no one will hire me, no one will respect my teaching, blah, blah, blah. I get it. Because the system, our culture, has this, has an understanding that by having the degree, you have the skills. And that is, of course you have some skills, of course, but that is tricky. So then you also get to do your return on investment on that, right? So who do you want to be hired by? If you want to teach at an academic institution, you better go have a career first. Go do some singing first, because that's the best way to get a teaching position, is to be a big time singer. That's the best way in. Don't have to prove that you're a great teacher. A little bit. I'm a little saucy with that one. Not in all cases, of course, but that is the way to get in. Yes, Liz Jackson Hearn says, not us. We value skills over credentials at the Voice Lab. Yes, VPUD grads, welcome. Yes, thank you. Right. So think to yourself, where do I want to teach? What is this piece of paper? What doors is this piece of paper going to open for me? So is this piece of paper going to open doors at an academic institution? Possibly, but not necessarily. And do you really want to teach an academic institution anyway? That's something to really consider. Something to really think about. Is this going to open doors for me to teach at a music school? I mean, it might. Is that where you want to teach eventually? You want to teach at a music school? Okay, it might. Is it going to open doors for me to teach in a classroom if you wanted to teach in a classroom? Well, in the States it might. In Canada it won't. In Canada you have to have an education degree to teach in a classroom. My master's in voice pedagogy does me no good. I cannot just go apply for a job. I can't even supply teach with that. That's right. In Canada, even our supply teachers have education degrees. Even our supply teachers know how to teach. Okay, I shouldn't say they know how to teach. Even our supply teachers at least have the background and have worked in classrooms, etc. Right? So we've got some good information there, right? So think to yourself, who am I getting this piece of paper for then? If you're a learner type person and you just want the information and you've got some cash to spare and you've got some time to spare and you love academia, great, go for it. But be honest with yourself. That's the reason I'm doing it. It's because I love this thing. It's not because I want to necessarily be a more effective teacher, and it's not because I need the piece of paper to prove to other people. But everyone else, who are you thinking? Who are you thinking this piece of paper is going to impress? Now, I know that is rich coming from me. I'm a doctorate. I know that's rich coming from me. I'll tell you what. As I explained at the beginning, as I talked about at the beginning, the doctorate. There were no programs like the one that I offer now. When I was 5 years into teaching and thinking, I don't really think I know what I'm doing here. I'm a really good teacher, but my personality is like that, but I'm not sure. I need more information. There were no programs. I mean, there were some, but they were all, it was better for me to do a master's at the time, right? And also, like I said, there were some caveats there. And then while I was there, I was like, well, I may as well just do a doctorate now too. We're in the, so those things were not available. They are now. I'll tell you what too, if I was in academia, I would never use my doctor title because you could tell someone who is not in academia who has a doctor because they actually use their doctor title. Maybe not. I use my doctor title to just be, there is certainly a certain level of gravitas, and I'm sort of leaning into societies and our culture's kind of respect for the title, if you will. I learned a lot, all of those things. We talked about that before. So I'm leaning into that and using that as a means of sort of, giving myself some respectability, if you will. And at the same time, it's not a crutch. It's not the thing that I'm like, well, you can trust me because I'm a doctor. No, trust me because I've done this work. Not because I did my doctorate, but because I've been teaching. This is what I do, right? Teach independent studio. I've done that's yeah. The doctorate reels you in a little bit, maybe, if you're into that kind of thing. And then once you hear, you're like, oh, right, yeah, she actually knows what she's talking about. All right. Pretty rich, right? Coming from me. Maybe don't do school, says Dr. Shannon Coates. But also, here's the thing, like even we also have so many doctors coming out, which is fine, whatever, it's all good, but we have so many doctors coming out. If you're getting a doctorate so that you can teach in a university program, we're turning out way more doctorates than we can possibly house in our academic programs. Far, far more. Which is fine, but academia is not incentivized to tell you that. They are only incentivized to bring you into the program, make some money, do the thing. There are wonderful teachers and wonderful programs in academia, but make your choices, know your options, understand what the programs offer. Understand what the programs offer. The questions that I'm asking here about barriers, pedagogy versus anatomy and physiology, and that specialist lens, those 3 questions, those apply to all programs, not just academia. They apply to all. Ask them from me for the voice pedant degree. Ask them from Shenandoah. Ask them about all of the wonderful, there are lots and lots of programs out there. Ask those questions. Ask those questions. Those are the questions to ask about your return on investment, right? What kind of learning? What are the barriers? Am I getting pedagogy or am I getting anatomy and physiology? Obviously, it's never just 2 things, but are you promising me something you're not actually going to deliver on? And also, what's your lens? There are lots of folks out there whose lens is that everything you learned in academia was wrong. So there's lots of folks out there in independent certifications, right? Everything you learned in academia was wrong. It was all bad. That's not a great lens either, right? If you, especially if you came through academia, right? Yeah, it's not a great lens either. I mean, it's a lens, whatever, it's a thing. I shouldn't say it's not a great lens. It's a lens around which you can make choices, is all I'm saying. All right, I've stopped. I've talked long enough. Here we go. Have a terrific weekend. Understand what you're asking for and what you need. Understand what your options are. Understand, ask some questions. You're allowed to ask questions. Yes, you are. Love you. Thanks, Liz Jazz and Nerds. All right, have a great weekend. Talk to you later. The VPUD starts on Monday. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. Can't wait. Here we go. Talk to you later. Let's just do that. Let's click that. There we go. Clicking. Whoops. I better end that video before I